Hello and welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger. Today's date is, whoa, look at that, March 1st, 2023. Before we begin, I want to give you guys a trigger warning because today's subject is very dark. Okay, so we are going to be talking about cannibalism and cannibals today, human sacrifices as well. So if that is going to be really disgusting. Well, yeah, I mean, it is disgusting. But if this is going to make you sick or just be too much for you, then I would say this is a good time to turn off the video and wait until Toy Thursday tomorrow for something more normal. On the one hand, I do feel that this is a little bit distasteful of a thing to talk about, right? It's an episode that I actually don't enjoy doing. However, it is historical fact, and I have talked about a lot of good stuff about my people, about Chinese ancestry, about my Chinese heritage, and it would be a bit one-sided and unfair if I leave out the bad stuff and not talk about them. So today we're going to talk about Chinese people and cannibalism. Yeah, I bet a lot of you didn't know that this was a thing, right? Okay, but just to give you sort of an example of how this really is, still is a thing. In the past few days, there was a very famous celebrity in Hong Kong that got murdered. I'm not going to go into all the details because this is going to take really long to go into who did what, who did. But long story short, okay, this model, her family member, her husband and his family member murdered her, and then to cover up the crime, they cooked her body in a big giant, a big soup pot for 3 days and 3 nights. They cooked her until she is, well, basically mush, and then disposed of that. So suddenly, once this be, became known to people, a lot of people are having issues. Like a lot of people are finding really difficult to eat soup, especially soups that have meat in them. Yeah, it kind of makes my stomach churn a little bit. And then, of course, there are people who will say, "Wow, this is crazy. This is crazy." They cooked a person. But truth be told, Chinese people have always have a tendency or a kind of a thing for eating human. If we look at back at if we look back at some of the Chinese classic novels, the Journey West, of course, the entire Journey West is about demons and monsters wanting to uh, eat the meat of the great monk who was traveling to the east to get Buddhist tomes and Bible. So yeah, the entire book of Journey East is about this guy who going to get eaten. And in fact, one of the heroes in Journey East, actually, sorry, Journey West. There is actually another book called The Journey East, but that is not the same one as the classic Journey West. The Journey West. There is one of the heroes, one of the people that was guarding their master on his way, so he doesn't get his butt eaten. Right? One of his disciples is a guy who walks around carrying, I can't remember, 7 or 9 human skulls on a chain, on a rope around his neck. And these were skulls from the previous people that he has eaten before he became a good guy. Okay, so definitely in the journey west, the whole idea revolved around eating human. And then we look at the water margin. The water margin. Uh, uh, in the water margin, again, one of the main character, one of the heroes, uh, a woman no less, when before she joined the uh, bandits, before she joined the rest of the good guys, she operated a hotel or an inn, I guess, because it's ancient days. I guess you call it an inn. She operated an inn, and her favorite thing to do was to murder her customers if they were rich people, if they were noble people. She would murder them in their sleep and then cook them and feed them to her guests. She would make dumplings out of them. This was right there in the water margin. Uh, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Romance of the Three Kingdoms. There was a guy who tried to please the king of Shu, Liu Bei, the guy who tried to please Liu Bei, and he didn't have any food at home. So to uh, to give Liu Bei food, this guy killed his wife and barbecued her. And then later he was heavily rewarded for what he did. Okay, so these are just quick examples of like in three greatest the three greatest historical classic Chinese novels, there has been mention of cannibalism. And what even worse is, in most of these cases, these people, these cannibals, were not strictly speaking condemned for what they did. For example, the guy who killed his wife to feed Liu Bei, he didn't get punished. He didn't get tried for murder. He got rewarded because he did his king a good service. In the Journey West, the guy who murdered and ate people did not get punished. He instead became one of the heroes and became one of their master's disciples. In the water margin, again, the lady who liked to murder people and make them into dumplings, she didn't get punished. She joined the heroes group and was celebrated as one of the 108 heroes in the book. Now, some people say, well, these are fantasy, right? These are just like books. Maybe the imagination of some author 500 years ago. But most of the time, when there's a scene that repeats itself in literature, uh, especially this much, this often, it's grounded in reality. And the reality is even darker than you can imagine. Let me take you back to the Shang Dynasty in Chinese history. Shang Dynasty started out around 1600 BC. Okay, so this is a dynasty that started 3,600 years ago, and it lasted for about 600 years. It's a very long lasting, one of the longer lasting dynasties in Chinese history. The Shang dynasty was very interesting in many aspects. One of, and we'll go back to cannibalism in a bit. I just need a break from that topic. So, the Shan dynasty, the Shan people, uh, they were perhaps the first and only people who only ruled China that focused on uh, being merchants and tradesmen. Any other dynasty, any other people that ruled China, with the exception of Mongolian uh, and the Shan people, has been farmers and huntsmen, fishermen, people who grew or go out to look for their own food. Not the Shan people. Shan people was a very trade-oriented people. They were very uh, much into shipping things from one end of China to the next, selling things and trading for goods and stuff like that. This is why today, in Mandarin, if you want to say merchants, if you want to say businessmen, you still call them 商人, 商人. Okay, 人 means people, 商 means business, merchant, and this word 商 came directly from the Shan dynasty, 3,600 years ago. Okay, that's a little trivia of where the word 商 came to mean business and trade in the modern language. Now, if the Shan people just focused in trading and doing business, probably they would have continued to rule China for much longer. However, in addition to being tradesmen and merchants, the Shan people were very, very cruel. Okay, these guys were not only into uh, some really messed up stuff. They were probably on the same level, if not more, than cultures such as the Aztec or the Zulu or the Maori. Okay, those cultures that we hear about today that ate people, sacrificed people, that rip people's heart out and rip people's lung out and do all kind of human sacrifice. All these things the Shan people did during the Shan dynasty. During the Shan dynasty, the Shan people had human sacrifice down to an art. And it was said the longer you can keep the sacrifice screaming, the better. Because the louder they scream, the more the ancestors would hear them. And it was said that the ancestors would be pleased by the way they scream. So it was really horrifying how the Shan people go into different ways of torturing people and during human sacrifice. They didn't just kill you. In fact, one of the things that they liked to do the most was to cut you in half at the waist and then let you slowly die while suffering in agony from that horrific injury. Another thing they like to do was to skin an entire person. They will remove your skin and then leave you alive, tied to a pole, and then gradually you will die from either pain or infection or starvation. Of course, sometimes when there's a lot of people to be sacrificed, the Shan people didn't mind speeding things up, such as cutting out your heart and cutting off your head, etc., etc. A lot of the evidence that archaeologists have unearthed have pointed to that in the Shan dynasty, uh, rather than using turtle shell for art and for fortune telling and for a ceremony, the preferred item was the top of a human skull. They would only use turtle shell if they ran out of human skull. This is how crazy this was. So during the Shan Dynasty, a lot of the outlying uh, outreach regions, a lot of the lords and other alliances, allies to the Shan people, they did their best to try to go invade someone else. Because if you were a subject of the Shan dynasty, let's say you are a lord in the Far East, every year it's your duty to send, uh, let's say, 300 people to the capital city to be sacrificed during the royal ceremonies. Now, they're not very picky if you are sending your people or whose people you're sending. So, a lot of lords would go to war randomly with each other to try to capture other lords' subjects so they can send them to the imperial city to be sacrificed. This way, their own people wouldn't have to get sacrificed. And they didn't just do this to peasants, okay? Because the Shan people believe that if you want to please the ancestors, then the better status, the higher status the sacrifice is, the better breed the sacrifice is, the more the ancestor would be pleased. So it wasn't just a case of rich people doing this to poor people. In fact, a lot of the time, the poor people wouldn't even be deemed worthy to be sacrificed. Uh, a lot of times the people that end up getting sacrificed were captives that had royal background. They were noblemen, noblewomen, rich people, people that had good breeding that would get sacrificed. For example, the guy who finally overthrew the Shan dynasty and built the Zhou dynasty, the scholarly emperor of Zhou, the Zhou Wenwang, his name was Ji Chang. Ji Chang, uh, why did he decide to overthrow the Shan dynasty? Well, there were many, many reasons, but the straw that broke the camel's back and made Ji Chang said, "Okay, that's it. I am going to rebel. I'm going to start a rebellion. It's either you or me. No more, no more." This event that started this was the 1 year when the emperor of Shan told, asked Ji Chang to come celebrate at the imperial city. It was like a birthday celebration or something. Uh, we don't have any historical record on what kind of celebration it was. But anyway, Ji Chang, being one of the lords, was told, okay, there's a celebration. We need you and your people to come celebrate, join us at the palace, and we're going to have a party. While they were at the party, uh, people, as usual, were being sacrificed to the ancestors. This was something that they did at a lot of parties. That they did this like a lot. Okay, so while they were at the party, people were being sacrificed, and the Shan emperor told Ji Chang, I noticed that you didn't bring enough people to be sacrificed. We are one short. You were supposed to bring 100, but you only have 99. What's going on? Are you planning on defying my order? Because if that's the case, I'm going to sacrifice you and everyone that's with you. So to save his life and his people's life, Ji Chang ended up giving up his oldest son, the prince, to the emperor to be sacrificed along with the rest of the people. And this was not just it. Now we come to the darker side of Chinese history, this very dark chapter of Chinese history. You see, not only did the Shan people believe in human sacrifice, they believe in that after you sacrifice the people to the ancestors, if you eat their flesh, then you will be eating with the ancestors. You'll be dining with the ancestors. So every time there's human sacrifice, the remains were always eaten afterward. Brace yourself, because this came out of an actual historical account of what happened that day. Ji Chang, with tears in his eyes, watched as his oldest son, who was only 20 years old at the time, being tied down at a wooden block, face down, and they cut his back open, extracted all the muscles from his back, and then dug out his heart from behind, and he was left there as a human husk tied over the block, while the rest of them took the meat off his bone, chopped it up, and mixed it with seasoning and ate it raw. And Ji Chang himself was forced into eating some of his own son's flesh so he wouldn't get killed by the emperor. So this was very, very gruesome stuff, the really evil stuff. So yeah, no wonder the guy went home and decided to rebel. I mean, after something like that, anyone would, right? So when did this horrific, crazy thing end? This culture of sacrificing and eating people. When did this end? You would have thought that this would have ended with the overthrowing of the Shang dynasty. But in fact, after the Shang dynasty got overthrown and the Zhou dynasty came into effect, the Zhou people, because a lot of them were still people that left over from the Shang dynasty, they wanted to carry on fighting each other, capturing each other, and sacrificing each other. And it wasn't until 50 years after the Zhou emperor took power, the second Zhou emperor decided, okay, we are going to be civilized people. From now on, no sacrificing people, no eating people, no more. We're going to be civilized. So it took almost 50 years after the new dynasty before this crazy tradition finally got put to rest and got written out of most historical records. But today, archaeologists have been unearthing ancient texts and tombs from the Zhou and Shang dynasty, and many of these still record in details these horrific incidences that occurred 3,600 years ago when people were butchered, tortured, killed, sacrificed, and eaten. And it was even believed that when you eat the remains of the sacrifice, when you eat human together, uh, it's a bonding process. It's almost like now you eat human flesh, I eat human flesh, so now we are a team. Now I trust you and I believe in your royalty. It even has that kind of ceremonial undertone to it. Like I said, this episode was very hard to do. For me, this is something that I rather pretend it never happened, but it did, and it's only fair that I tell you guys the good and the bad, as well as all the things that in between when talking about a culture. Um, I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until it's Thursday. I promise it will be a lot better than uh, this dark episode. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。